Our destination lies somewhere in the frozen sea. 2 islands, one belongs to America and one to Russia. Only a few huts inhabited by Inuit families, who lament to this day that their natural home has been partitioned by superpowers. The Cold War never ended here. Be it in the mountains of Montana, the plains of North Dakota, or along the river Niagara, we encounter wild nature and the people who look after it. In this way, we get to rediscover the old America, far from the cities. We cross the continent over the course of one winter, moving always west. We go from the Atlantic coast in Maine to the Pacific, and then on to the no man's land of the Bering Strait. It is only rarely worthwhile sailing out from Monhegan at this time of year, but if you own a boat like fisherwoman Chris and her assistant Travers, then you don't leave it sitting in the harbor. We start our journey from the only village on the island. In addition, we've chosen the worst weather of the month: cold, wet and windy. And it stinks of old herring, which Travers uses as bait.
So everybody has a different opinion.
What are the other options?
We use this, redfish, orange roughy, tuna heads, there's a few others.
The weather is unpredictable here, says Chris, but you have to live with that every day. Others who grow up here move away to college and never come back. Chris did it the other way round. She came for one summer and stayed. Why?
I worked summers at the hotels. I came out when I was 18, and then I didn't start fishing until I graduated from college. And my husband and I, we thought we'd spend a year out here before we went to grad school, and then we just started fishing because it's the only job. And I loved it, and he hated it.
Chris is a happy-go-lucky person who makes us forget the bad weather quickly.
Okay.
I offer to clean the windows to make myself useful.
Does it work?
Then we reach the catching grounds and are curious to see what we'll find in the traps that she's hauling up.
Oops, sorry.
The quarry hide away down there when it gets cold, Chris tells us. We only get those that are still crawling around.
Shrimp.
We're gonna haul all 3 and put them on the rail. Then we'll empty them. That's be the best.
But they're happy with the first haul.
I'll do it.
So is that a good catch more than you thought?
Yeah, we haven't been catching a lot lately, so this is pretty good. I mean, we've only just set them out. The trapping only just started being okay.
Then the larger individuals come up. The fishermen are not allowed to keep them all. Females with eggs and juveniles are put back. Only fully grown lobsters can be kept.
And it measures, so that's good. So we get another keeper. Woo! I'll put it in there for Travis to band.
2 rubber bands, then he's placed with the others. Not such a bad day, says Chris. In this way, she does her rounds, year in, year out. According to the map, we're on the easternmost point of America. Monhegan is the first outpost of New England, we're told. Only 50 people live here. The hotel where she once worked is up there on the hill. It's only open in summer. As she takes me up the hill, I ask her what keeps her here. I
What
only
makes
see
you
a
like
grey
this place so
island.
much that it took you?
Chris sees the
It made
idyll.
you stay.
I mean, it's just really like the day I got here, I was like, wow, this is just the quaintest, prettiest, nicest place. And it was the people too. It was just this really fun, loving, but interesting, smart, eclectic community.
As the day ends, the skies promise some improvement, and Monhegan's spirited fishermen invite us for beer and prawns. Ever since there have been fishermen, there's been chat at the end of the day. Chat about the day and about the old days when Monhegan was even further away from it all.
Everybody worked hard, and it seemed like everybody paid their bills and they had something to eat, and it just didn't worry about everything so much. But now there's so much going on, it just got everything's in a turmoil. You know, I told him, I said, you know, you never know if there's going to be any lobsters in the future, but there's always going to be teeth. He wanted to be a dentist, and he made out quite well.
This is still the case on the other islands too, provided they have us natives, they joke.
There was 300 and something,
Okay, that was not
and now, now there's only 14 inhabited islands.
They had closed the school for a number of years, which Monhegan has done. They've been through a lull and closed the school and then reopened, but Matinicus had closed the school very recently. They're open again because they have more than us now. They have like 4 kids in the school.
We ask whether the people really are kinder here than elsewhere.
Every fisherman knows that if their engine lets go, they better not have all enemies or they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So it's so people cooperate for all sorts of good reasons.
It's a different America from the one we know from the news. It is more pristine, relaxed, better tempered. The postboat delivers goods, from mail order bed sheets to the six-pack. Weekend inhabitants return from the mainland, sick people from the doctors. Even babies have been delivered at sea. Chris uses the dry afternoon to do some painting. She took over the identification color of the buoy from a fisherman who emigrated. Orange can be seen well from a long way off. That's why she took the color when it was up for grabs.
How American do you feel out here?
I would certainly say we feel American, but we do call the inshore or Port Clyde, we call it Port Clyde, America, or we feel like we say we're going to America when we leave to go inshore, because you just feel so in your own world out here, or disconnected sometimes. Yeah. I mean, we know that our ballots don't get inshore until, well after the election's over. But, I mean, I guess if it came down to a popular vote, close contest, we'd get counted, we would hope. But we don't always know. It's kind of, we vote.
Before we depart for America, Chris shows us her place of work at home, which she shares with her husband, Rich. It's the internet jobs as accountant and parenting advisor that enable them to live on the island.
On the other remote islands, I've seen that it does make it a possibility for other people to work online or to work at jobs that they travel for, but they can be and live in these communities.
The main thing we wanted to try to do was to come back in more of a position of dictating ourselves what we do, to be able to work as much as we want.
So last question, why don't you work on the same boat?
We did.
We've done it.
We've done that. And it's better for our marriage that we don't. Yeah. Definitely. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. Well, and it's hard to work together for 12 hours all day and then come home and it's your turn to cook dinner. It's just hard.
The next time the postboat arrives, we depart from Monhegan. On our journey, we'll meet more people like Chris who choose to go their own way. It is a good 12 nautical miles to the mainland. The captain knows how important his services are for the island.
We rarely cancel, again, because a lot of people count on us. Especially in the wintertime, they have doctor's appointments or whatever. If it's only 3 boats a week, we try to go almost no matter what. But there certainly are limits.
He lives on the coast, he tells me. When he needs something, he just goes to the shop. But if someone radios him to say that there's no baking soda on Monhegan, then he'll bring that along. On Highway number 2, which leads across the continent, we continue our journey. First to Vermont and then to the Niagara Falls. The farm where we stop en route doesn't look special at first glance, but it's championing a new trend in America. The trend back to the smallholding.
You want the door open? We are coming!
Feeding time in the morning. Calf Selena doesn't trust me.
This is Selena, so you could... Hey, Selena, how are you? Huh?
Either we need to provide mother's udders, or the bottle has to go into the railings for Selena to drink properly.
They look like deer, actually.
Don't they?
Yes. You keep them all now?
No, we keep a couple every year, and the rest are sold through Jersey Marketing Services and sold throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
So some years it's harder than others to decide who to pick, you know.
Farmer Stephen is teaching a Norwegian fjord horse to plow. More and more farmers prefer horses to tractors, he says.
Yeah, quite definitely. Particularly among organic, sustainable farmers, more and more people are really looking at the workhorse as a real viable option these days to tractor farming. When we first started 10 years ago, there was nobody, but it's growing, and all across the country. Yeah, real interest.
It is not some unworldly dropout walking behind the horse, quite the opposite. The Farmers Collective is asserting itself against the US agricultural industry with ecological standards and traditional working methods. The operators even built a village with enough space for dozens of families. By now, it even has an old people's quarter for the senior members.
It started from wanting to be a farm, so an agricultural base, and a close village of people who are taking care of that land.
The house share became a proper business.
So our community meetings are made up of all kinds of issues. Everything from energy, transportation, social.
I think overall we've been pretty happy with this very clear responsibility for that, who's stewarding that land and how they're taking care of it and how they're paying their bills and how they're making their income from it. And if it was 44 adults all trying to make the decisions for how to run that business, it could have been a bit of a mess.
Others see to new products, for example cheese, and test them on the market. Vermont, the boss tells us, has long been in the same class as the Alpine countries.
Because they taste better. There's kind of the curd is here, try it. Doesn't taste like it will when it's aged, but it's...
What is it going to be?
It's going to be our Scotney Mountain cheese, which is a Swiss Alpine style cheese.
Yeah, it's rather sweet than cheesy.
Yes.
One can see and smell in the cheese cellar that professionals are at work here. In the old days, there was a $2 penalty for not dismounting at the bridge. We take a detour to the north because we've read about the town of Derby Line, which lies behind the mountains of Vermont on the Canadian border. Apparently, the border runs straight through the houses. We want to see that. There is a $5,000 fine for illegal border crossing, even if you are just popping to the shops.
What if I like that bakery better than this one, and I'm an American? Do I get into trouble every day?
Well, no, you do have to go through customs. You do have to report through customs at the port of entry.
But there's no custom officer, so what do I
Then
do?
you have to walk down this hill and go through the Canadian customs, which is just actually just down the hill over the river there.
So I need a half hour to get my bread.
The woman is the manager of the local library. A house moose is watching over the border, which inside even divides cabinets and shelves.
How often do you cross the border daily?
I have no idea. My office is in the United States. The photocopier is in Canada. The circulation desk is in Canada. So I must cross the border 50 times a day at least.
Readers are allowed into the building from both sides, but only if they go out the same way.
There are benefits too. Being on the border, we buy our heating oil on the United States side where it's cheaper. We get our electricity from Quebec because the hydro is cheaper. So there are trade-offs.
One extra border crossing for us then, to get us out of here legally. Driving through vineyards, we reach New York State and the border region around the Niagara River, up to the falls. The river behind us cuts ever deeper into the plain, the man next to me explains. This is the local rescue pilot, Rudy Hafen, who for years has been the only one here to have a pilot's license.
It was more a straight line. You see, a third of the water by the Horseshoe Fall goes by the first third. So that's where the falls are going back, eroding back the most and the fastest. How far down into the falls? The falls did freeze one time because here the ice piled up and then it knocked off the water going over the falls, so that very little water that still trickled through froze.
The pilot, originally from Switzerland, knows every eddy.
And on the left is the Niagara Whirlpool. There's a lot of water coming down the whirlpool. It turns.
You call that a whirlpool?
That's a whirlpool. It's 200 feet deep. It's very vicious. Don't go swimming in there. It will take you down 200 feet.
Okay, I don't.
And then you never come up again.
Yeah.
Here we do most of the wrapping up of the victims, prepare them, fly them out. See, that is pretty silly to be out here, right? The ice breaks up, the guy's in the water, I get the call.
My stomach doesn't like the maneuvers as much as Rudy does, so I am glad for a break on terra firma. One of the few landing places for Rudy's rescue missions, though often it's too late.
This area from the whirlpool, pretty much halfway up to the falls, nobody's allowed to go in.
Yeah.
If they catch you here kayaking or swimming, there's heavy fines.
Yeah.
This area is also supervised by the police on both sides on a daily basis because there's no way of survival.
Yeah.
It's been tried and many people lost their lives in here.
Only one was lucky recently, a dramatic suicide attempt which earned Rudy a medal and a lot of respect in piloting circles.
Famous all around the world. It got me on national TV. It was the 11th of March 2008 when this man jumped over the falls. We had 45 knot wind, right? Almost 70 kilometers, and there was no way nobody could get to him. Then the helicopter, and I got him with a sling, but he took it off because he didn't want it to live. He wanted to commit suicide. And so then with the downwash from the rotors, I kept pushing on him and pushing and pushing, and after 13 minutes of pushing him with the downwash of the helicopter, I finally got him to shore, to the reach of the fire department, and then they pulled him in.
Niagara Village doesn't fit this image of horror stories at all. It's regarded as the most beautiful village in Canada. With Victorian houses and lots of views onto the Great Lakes. And of course, the famous falls that attract travelers throughout the year. But unfortunately, there are also those who are drawn here by a death wish. We don't like to talk about it, but it's a fact, Rudy tells us.
Most people who die around the falls are suicides. The ones who go over are the ones who want to go over, right? It's a dark number, but nobody wants to talk about it. And mostly we come too late, right? Because it goes so fast.
But despite that, he loves the views just as he did the first time he saw them when he flew over the river and was awestruck like a child. With a short break in Michigan, we set a course for North Dakota, and thus to America's Midwest, which lies beyond the Great Lakes. And towards the continental winters, which make any attempt at walking impossible. Luckily, Clarence Iverson is there, the last snowshoe maker in America.
Give him a good coat. Oh, your snowshoe is on.
So, am I good?
You're good. You want to go for a bit of a walk? Okay.
Now we walk on the snow, he says, not through it.
Oh, we got coyotes, wolves, martins, fishers, fox, deer.
The man is his own best product tester. If the snowshoe carries him, it'll carry anybody. For 50 years, his small business has held its own against the competition from cheaper countries and against the bureaucrats.
If you have any glip in your papers, it custom takes and holds it. You might not get it for 2-3 weeks. It's just been crazy, and it's getting worse all the time.
Next door, Julie is knotting the rawhide for the inner shoe.
On average, if I wasn't doing anything else but lacing for the full day, I can do 30 pair of these a day.
Two hard-working employees, a gnarled old boss. Iverson's small business is representative of many that are seeking their own way through America's economic crisis. In future, he doesn't want to obtain the leather from Canada anymore, but from the Central States. The transport takes longer, but he won't have to pay customs duty.
That's why we're in this trouble. That's our problem. We need to build something. I got to make something you want, and you pay me. I mean, that's... Our jobs are gone. You give them away. We got to build stuff here in the United States. With our own resources, we have them.
When we've given our best wishes to Iverson and his remaining staff, we say goodbye to the Great Lakes. But we stay on icy grounds. And a bitterly cold wind too, the wind of North Dakota. Frank Kunz wouldn't swap this for anything.
In my early 20s, it was exciting to be gone, you know, and seeing different places, working in different areas. And it was always nice to come home. Like I said, I never really planned on coming back here, but it just kind of happened that way. I like it not being crowded. I mean, it's not overly crowded. I love people and I love big cities, but I love to be able to get out of them in a day or two.
What Frank loves the most are his ranch and his horses. It is not just any old herd that he's looking after with his brother and a Native American partner. These are Nokota horses, which used to be ridden by Chief Sitting Bull and his tribe.
When he sheds out, a blue roan will change color with the season. So when he starts shedding to get his summer coat now, he'll get almost white, and then he'll turn a steel black. And you'll also notice the feathering on the legs. On the northern plains, when these horses have to be out there on their own, when they have their own land, and you get snow cover on the grass and things, they need to paw through it, and that feathering helps protect the back of their legs, because when they do a lot of pawing, especially when the snow has a crust or something, they can get raw.
When I go to stroke them, they pull back just out of my reach. Don't go to them, says Frank. Wait till they come to you. It's true. Soon they want to be rubbed, preferably on their rump. Because as soon as the sun shines, the winter fur warms them more than is comfortable.
It feels warm.
We have an appointment in the saloon of the small town of Linton. We discover that not everybody thinks Frank's 500 head herd is a good idea. Relations between farmers and horse ranchers have always been difficult, I'm told by brothers Frank and Leo.
So the ranchers were first, and then the farmers came
Right, basically. Then the farmers came in with when they started giving them the acreage. What was it, 160 acres? You could homestead it and stuff like that. And then they started putting in fields and fences, and the cowboys would ride across their fields, cut their fences, you know what I mean? It wasn't always friendly, you know.
There's a lot of people that, you know, and I'm not begrudging them none, I mean, but there's a lot of ranchers, farmers that have a problem seeing grass out there consumed by horses. It's what do they call them? Hay burners. It's a hay burner, it's good for nothing.
Today, many acknowledge that Frank and Leo are conserving a cultural heritage. The argument about hay has been solved long ago. Over the cold months, Frank distributes extra rations. The ranch is financed by a trust and from donations. Every so often, Frank sells a few yearlings to enthusiasts as riding horses, smaller than a typical horse, but bigger than a pony. or simply to people who think Nokota horses are as beautiful as Frank thinks.
Walk and just can walk. We're going to back off right now because of the...
I ask why he, as a white rancher, decided to rescue the Dakotas from extinction.
When did you
Was there a
decide
reason?
to do this? Was there any event that made you decide
Well,
to do
it's
that?
not any certain events. It's just probably a lot of different events or just life, I guess. It's just where you kind of let you.
Yeah.
We always had horses. I grew up in a family. There's 12 kids in there. My dad, he loved horses, and like I say, if you wanted to go somewhere, you did it on horseback.
His parents' village is within seeing distance, complete with the small church. I ask Frank what fascinates him about these animals.
What's so special about these horses?
The native type, we can trace them directly back to Sitting Bull's War and buffalo horses. When he surrendered Fort Beaufort in 1881, all his horses ended up down in Medora.
Okay.
But also the type of horses that local ranchers were using at that time were native horses. We make progress, we make very slow progress, but that's like, slow progress. A friend of mine said, if you go slow and you make progress slow, you don't have to worry about backing up so quickly if you have to.
We are told by Frank we should come in spring when it's all green here, but he likes the winter, though he can hardly keep up with snow plowing. He doesn't only admire the horses, but also the Dakota Indians, also known as the Sioux tribe, as we can see when we reach his house. Frank and Leo introduced their partner Butch Thunderhawk.
I'm not sure if he was teasing me, but is there something about that?
This is a horse memorial effigy.
Yeah.
It was carved by a warrior to honor the horse that was killed in battle. These horses were very spiritual to those warriors, and those horses became part of their life. They became part of their family. And the warrior societies, the blue roans were the most favorite horse, and it has the power of a thunderstorm, of lightning, that gives that horse the speed, the strength, the endurance.
I read accounts where the natives would say, if they, being the cavalry, didn't catch us within the first 6 miles in a chase, after that, they would be chasing us for days, and or this way and that way, and we would be riding around and around and around them, and their horses would.
In the end, I, a city dweller, even have a riding lesson, so that I can admire the horse from the correct place and understand what motivates Frank, Leo, Butch Thunderhawk, and maybe even the dog to carry on. The wild beauty of the last herd of Nokota horses. As we cross the Missouri, we put in a minute's silence for Chief Sitting Bull, who now looks down the river valley for eternity. We travel through Montana, the Rocky Mountain state, towards the Pacific coast, and choose the historic railway route, the first that was built straight across the mountains, the Great Northern Railway. It begins to thaw, at least in the valley stations. Once it was mainly hired workers who traveled here, who built railway embankments and bridges and lived in quarters right next to the line. Today, the conductor shows travelers between the cities of Seattle and Chicago to their window seats, so they have a nice view of the heart of Montana.
All right, here's your
if the fog permits a view along the way.
There you go. Have a wonderful trip.
It's more than 100 years since the last tunnels were dug to connect America's center with the Pacific ports. Now they connect urban settlements with national parks, such as the Glacier Park, a World Natural Heritage Site, even though it's losing its glaciers. We get out at Belton Station and count the number of wagons on the next freight train, which takes minutes to pass. Our final count is 114, which is not unusual for these parts. The reason we got out was the local hotel, which has promised us somewhat remote but rather original rooms, especially for train travelers. First, the manager shows me a disused train carriage.
Here we have our restored Great Northern caboose.
Okay. So, who spent the night here in the old days?
This would be the gentleman whose job it was to make sure the lantern was lit at the rear of the train, so that in case there was a train coming up behind them, that they would see them.
Okay, so they worked and slept in shifts.
They worked and slept in shifts. That was the desk that they would sit at and hang the lantern off the rear of the caboose.
I like it. I take this one and I start with a night shift.
The quarters even have a terrace. I ask how things were when this was still a boomtown.
How was it when it was boomtown?
When it was a boomtown, it was several hundred people coming and going. This was a major stop. All the engines that traveled west had to stop here to get water, for steam engines or diesel or supplies as they moved westwards.
I also have a look at a luxury suite, a converted locomotive.
That's the blue room.
Welcome to the GN 441 luxury locomotive. It's our restored Great Northern engine.
I don't believe it. I don't buy it.
Fireplace and leather couch.
And a kitchen.
Full kitchen. Tried to use as many native furnishings as we could. Antique barnwood floors.
Okay.
King-size bed in the rear bedroom. Full bath.
Okay.
With a lovely view of the train tracks.
And the train.
And the train while you sleep.
Yeah. Where did you get the locomotive from?
I believe they found it in Wichita, Kansas in a scrapyard. And it's an original Great Northern locomotive.
Then he takes me to the front where the driver used to
the original
sit.
cockpit.
That's a nice part of a hotel room. I never had that. So
It almost seems as if the engine could still drive, but in reality it was dragged here with great trouble.
Please,
I ask if the brakes still work, and at the same time get an inkling of why enthusiasts' hearts beat faster.
Okay.
The old sleeping quarters for hundreds of rail workers are today the hotel headquarters. The railway also brings winter sports enthusiasts here. Even houses have been transported on these rails.
What's the story of that photograph?
Very similar. It's actually a dorm that was built for the East Glacier Lodge by the Great Northern Railway. So it was done by the same contractors in Kalispell and then shipped via rail over to East Glacier.
Yeah.
It was actually the first building I stayed in when I came out here, when I used to work for that company.
How problematic is winter here for the railway?
Depends on the winter. It can be more problematic some winters than others. This winter was a great winter for us. We actually had 2 freight derailments. The rail lines, they work very hard. Derailments and avalanches and different difficulties associated with running the rail lines.
Our camera team gets strapped in again in a helicopter. This time we're hanging out of the doors. It's freezing cold, but enlarges our field of view downwards. We want to reach the summit to find the snow ghosts. These are treetops looming out of the mountain, covered in snow and embraced by wisps of cloud. Climate change will continue to affect the park. Whether it'll teach America to look after its natural heritage better is an open question. We're back on the highway. The states of Idaho and Washington are waiting for us. As the bridges get narrower, names such as Salmon or Beaver River remind us of the Native American tribes who lived here before a different America displaced them. We hit the Canadian border again along the branching inland of the Puget Sound. And we hit the west coast for the first time. A whole continent lies behind us. Boat building is the local specialty, but ancient boats like the one on which Jack and Matt take us out are even more desirable.
Hi, I'm Klaus.
Hi, I'm Matt. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
What do we have to know about the boat?
I've owned it for about 13 years, and I've restored it, and it's just an ongoing project.
It sounds like it is a real dream boat for you, huh?
It is, yes. Yeah.
It was known as Dreamboat in the year it was built, 1928. Dreamboat with driver's cab. Jack also builds his own boats as a teacher in the nearby college workshop. Matt is one of his students. The first owners called her Emmeline. I asked how he found the boat.
A classmate of mine and I were talking and just decided to buy a boat. It had nothing to do with anything we had ever done before.
And you decided just to have enough money for a boat?
Well, it took some time, but, well, I quit college to buy a boat.
Oh. So what did your parents say? You're quitting college for a boat?
They didn't find out about it until I had already quit, because they were overseas at the time. I sent them a postcard on the... I was going to school in Virginia on the East Coast, and we quit school and drove to the West Coast. And I sent him a postcard from somewhere in the Midwest.
Is that a role model?
Well, I finished college, but I've always wanted a boat too and built a few. So, yeah, now I'm studying with Jack at boat school and learning how to build my own boats.
We arrive after an hour's journey from the main harbour of the bay, Port Townsend. Mariners used to live here. Today it's students at the boat building school of Port Hadlock. A side plank is heated in the steam oven to make it pliable. Those who work here aren't earning money. They pay to be here. Old and young work in teams. Many are retraining.
You get to be hands-on too. You don't just sit in a class and learn about things. You get to learn how to do things, which is wonderful. And it feels
to have this thing done and be out on the water with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that what you regularly do?
Well, this is a sold boat. This boat has an owner. But yeah, we'll launch it and we'll make sure that it doesn't, sink.
Did that ever happen?
I don't think so. I think so far our record's pretty good. But
if need be, they put a boat together twice.
We have spent literally days measuring and remeasuring the spaces and the shape of the plank. We had one unfortunate error that caused us to have to start over again.
Many start from scratch, even though when they start in Jack's class, they may have a whole career behind them as a doctor or salesman. The college builds 10 boats a year, he says. Do they all find a buyer?
To learn how to do it, you have to build one. And so, if we're building 10 boats a year, within a couple of years, we're going to have more boats than we know what to do with. So we have to sell them.
The clients are loyal and return every so often, for example, to get new sails. The course includes sewing skills. The leather cuffs are for protection, though it can hurt at times.
this class, maybe 379,000. There's been a lot of blood on these sails, though. Every day somebody bleeds, and it's like, oh, quick, get away from the sail. You don't want to get blood on the sail. This has taken me 2 days to just do this corner. It's hard. I'm new to it, but it's slow, even if you're not.
At the end of the day, the campus team often go to Port Townsend docks. This is where the sailors who'd sailed from Europe all around South America used to land. Matt is playing in one of the bars.
I'm making my way back home again. I'll be there tomorrow. And if I don't see you there, my friend, don't live in sorrow. I wish I had
The songs are about home and friendship, and about being on a journey. I wish I had more time and could find what I was looking for. Well, has Jack found it?
You have seen a lot of corners of the U.S. Why did you end up here?
The climate is really pretty mild. It's a little cooler on average, but you don't get the extreme heat, you don't get the extreme cold. There aren't a lot of bugs.
Working our way along America's west coast, we reach Alaska. Our destination is the gold digger town of Nomi. The inhabitants call their state the last wilderness, and anyone who's been here knows why. Near a town called Geerdrick in a valley that was recently flooded by the sea, we have a date with 2 young grizzly bears. Their story is tragic. The mothers were shot because they were roaming in inhabited areas. The cubs have been here since.
Good boy.
Animal keeper Aaron is now preparing them for a life in the zoo.
Station was the first command that we taught them for safety for us and the bear. So we teach them station so that they know that they can't get too close to us.
They are called
Station.
Shaggy and Tagoka
Station.
and are just 1 year old.
Tagoka, station. Good boy. Come on, Shaggy. We don't wrestle with these guys. We don't pet them. I've never even touched these guys with all the time that I've worked with them. Because
Would you like to?
No, actually I would not. Even if they're playing, those claws can just snag your skin right off.
She's a biologist and came to Alaska from Texas. She's also an animal lover.
My project was to train a camel.
A camel?
A camel. So I had to train a camel to target, to wear a halter, and to cush, which is to sit down, to lay down for a camel. And then I've worked with a lot of other carnivores, which also helped me working with bears because I do know a little bit of how to react around a carnivore in certain situations. So I've worked with hyenas, a tiger.
Well, very different animals. Is there any rule that is valid for any animal? Did you learn something from the camels that you can use here now with the bears?
I did. The camel, probably, even though it's a camel and it doesn't have teeth like a bear does, they can still hurt you, but you need to make sure that you're not getting comfortable with it, you're not acting like it's a pet.
Right.
That's the #1 mistake people make, is that they get too comfortable with an animal, and it's a wild animal, so they can have a bad day and just not want to work with you. Go, go.
The 2 cubs wouldn't survive in the wild, the keepers tell me, and they'd look for food in the villages and be shot. But it isn't always self-defense that's the cause of bears being shot. Poachers and gun freaks also pursue the animals. The ranger knows this too.
Station. Go, go. Good boy.
Let's say a big bear is killed. And someone sees later, hey, there were cubs around, so I killed a mother bear. You estimate who calls and who doesn't call. There are others also who wouldn't call, right?
It's tough to say.
Yeah.
But we're where the bears go that people report.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we work very closely with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game to ensure that those cubs have homes.
Yeah. But why do you have to stay out of politics if it comes to animal protection? Because it's always turning into ideological fights here?
That's exactly why. We don't want to get involved in ideological fights. Our purpose here and our mission here is to take care of animals that can't take care of themselves.
With every mile that we move north, we are moving deeper into winter. Soon the settlements aren't connected by roads any longer, but by light aircraft and pack-ice runways. railway was only in use for a few years, when a few lumps of gold were found here and gold hunters came from the Yukon and Klondike to Nome, which thus grew to become Alaska's most westerly town. Many Inuit families live here, but also dropouts who have rediscovered an old way of living, the yurt. A hot soup for the sledge dogs. Stephanie Johnson, her day job's a nurse, originally came up here from West Virginia because she and her husband wanted to risk something in life again. And to venture into the Arctic cycle, you need a dog sleigh, she says.
He loves mushing, so we were able to take him out, and he went mushing with me this year, so. I never dreamed I would have all these dogs.
Yeah.
But I think being in this area, especially in the winter, you have to have something that you're passionate for, especially in the winter time. You have to be busy to survive, because it can be very lonely, and you're kind of away from your family and friends, and there's no shopping center to go, you know, get your mind off of the winter blues.
We, however, were more attracted to a yurt. They decided on the yurt because a house was too expensive.
This piece of lumber right here, it's a treated 4x4, twice the length, 8 feet long, and this cost $24. Now, if we weren't here in this area in Nome, and we were down in Anchorage, say, this same piece of lumber would cost $12.
How much did it cost in West Virginia?
In West Virginia, yeah, it's probably about $6. Yeah.
Of course, we want to see the yurt from the inside, and it appears to be larger than it looks from the outside.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
Living room, study, open-plan kitchen, bathroom and toilet, then a sleeping gallery under the roof.
People say it's our circus tent. So when we build it, we're going to put a trapeze in the middle, but the fan got in the way.
They paid $45,000. A house would be 4 times as expensive.
Were there things that you would do differently if you had the chance to do it again?
You can opt to put real windows in instead of the Lexan windows. And we kind of wish we had done that, especially for these two.
And when you leave, I mean, it's easily said, you take it with you. Would that work practically?
Sure. The yurt, absolutely. The lattice work is in 3 pieces. It just comes unscrewed, shuts back up like an accordion. And then,
in the meantime, they continue settling in, even though every piece of wood brings the cost up. There is no more forest here. Instead, says Lance, there is the occasional unwelcome visitor.
It's not going to stay by itself at this point. There's another yurt over there and another yurt back there, and they seem to be surviving okay. So, except when last year they had a bear go through both of their yurts. So, we're looking forward to that.
So a bear could go through the wall?
It did. Not here, but the one that's over there. Yeah, just ripped it down and went in and was looking for food.
Since then, Lance and Stephanie have put even more trust in their guard dogs, and they hope that that winter was an exception for the animals and their constant search for food. We have to pack for the last leg of the journey. A plane that can land on the ice will take us from Nome to the Diomede Islands, which lie on either side of the US-Russian border. For a long time we see Alaska's coastline underneath. Then we start flying towards the airstrip between Little and Big Diomede. last outpost of America, the destination of our 8,000-mile journey. Not far from the only village on the island, the pilot makes a textbook landing on pure ice. The visibility is unusually good for the area, he says. Shortly afterwards, the transport sledges from the village are here, and a handful of passengers for the return flight.
Hey, my name's Klaus.
I get to know Robert,
thanks for having
one
us.
of the village
Thank you for
spokespeople.
agreeing to our visit.
This is little Diomede.
Yeah, we had a great view. It's wonderful.
I'm glad you guys came here. You guys will have a wonderful time. We got nice people here in Diomede. They got good hospitality. You'll find very unique people here in Diomede.
Yeah.
First, along the landing strip and down an ice track, we reach the small settlement. About 50 Inuit families live here with a view towards the larger sister island, surrounded by ice and rocks. There's a church, an empty army post, and a school.
So today's a new day. What do we add?
The curriculum is the same here as everywhere else, even though the children have no knowledge of many things the teacher tells us. She came here for a year from California.
Let's count by even numbers. Diomede is so isolated and remote, and the kids don't have the same background knowledge that a lot of kids do when they grow up somewhere that's not the bush in Alaska. And so they don't have a lot of the same concepts that kids do growing up. Like, there are no trees here, and there's no law enforcement, so you can't take a visit to the fire station or the firehouse. You know, there's a lot of things that they haven't experienced.
But there are cinnamon buns and apple puree from the school kitchen, even though that's a world away from the children's favorite dish.
What do you like most if it comes to eating?
Pizza.
Really? What about you?
Pizza.
The regional cuisine has something very different in store at the moment. At least that's what Robert promises as he takes me out on the ice. At this time of year, he spends every day out here from dawn till dusk. Over in Russia, the next day has started as the international dateline runs here. Robert is constantly on the watch for polar bears, whilst he monitors his fishing lines and hopes that the Alaskan crabs bite.
Is there a hook, or do you just have to wait till the crab holds?
Until the crab gets a hold of it, and then it feeds on it. Yeah. So once it feeds on it, it don't want to let go. As we know, when we got a crab is when we try to pull it up, it hangs on.
Yeah.
The crab hangs on to the rock.
Yeah.
Right now it's got only 6 holes. Yeah. But I may put more down because I have more crabbing line.
His neighbor at the hole next door has just struck lucky. These are the long-legged specimens that the Inuit catch here.
What do you do if it holds?
If it holds, I hang on to it for a while and just slowly try to move it up.
Be patient, he says, but my fingers are already freezing.
I wouldn't survive here.
You going?
I don't think so.
A store to last all winter is piling up at our neighbor's hole. Nature has been feeding us in this way for centuries, Robert explains.
Some people use crab pots. A man can live on this island without any supplies coming in. We have, on the island, we have salmon berries, the fruit.
On this rocky island?
On this rocky island, we have this all kinds of plants, wild potatoes, wild onion. Subsistence, what we hunt is right around the island.
Yeah.
That's where it is. The seals, the walrus, the bear, the whale, everything passes through this strait between these two islands here.
And there was no better place you found?
There's some places I like to live, but this is home.
The children that grow up on Diomede may never have seen a tree. Instead, they learn early how to survive at 50 degrees below zero. A change in the weather puts a spanner into our return flight plans. The sun only rarely makes it through, and new snow piles up on the runway. Meanwhile, the villagers perform dances for us. Dance, next to language and food, are what connects the Inuit people worldwide. The drums are made from walrus skin. The rhythm follows the animal world, the musicians explain.
Yeah, it's just an imitation of the walrus. The way with the big flippers, the way they swing around. That's how the motion started. We could even put a motion washing dishes. You wash dishes, right? And if the beat just right to that washing dishes, we'll use that motion.
We've put up nighttime quarters in the classroom. The storm continues. The villagers live off their stored food.
Out here, that's the only Eskimo with it, you know. So outside
Patrick
of that,
Umiak is at 75, the oldest person in the village. He remembers how it was when the Inuit lived on both islands, until the Russians forced the neighboring islanders to move elsewhere.
Were really going back and forth.
Yes.
And they share whatever they got. That big island, so people over here always get something first. This time, you know, when belugas or...
Yes.
And they share.
Do you think it is difficult to keep...
Back then he was in the National Guard. If you weren't fed by the army, you lived off the land. A school already existed then, but it burned down at some point.
I don't know when, maybe before I was born or...
Yes. Did people stop going from one island to the other, or did people go?
Yeah.
Were there no one sneak in or out?
Completely closed. No, you can't just go over there, even nowadays.
Yeah.
They see you as soon as you got off that aircraft.
Yeah.
They're looking down at you.
Yeah.
24 hours a day.
We'd rather not find out if he's correct, even though the weather has improved. But several days pass before the snowplows have cleared their way to the airstrip. Time to say goodbye to Robert. He's back on his day shifts.
So you said, given the...
He has
talk
one
about the
final
other
story
island.
to tell us about an
Diomede-
amazing encounter.
Diomede belongs to Russia. In the late 60s and early 70s, we used to have Inuits used to come across and meet us halfway on the ice, and we used to exchange a few gifts, try out their rifles, just to have a good time, knowing that we're here and they're there. But we still think Big Diomede belongs to us, and Russia has taken it away from us because our people live on both islands. Our relations, we were pretty much related before the Iron Curtain closed.
Yeah.
With these words that sound very familiar to a German, our adventure ends in no man's land, between two islands that history has forgotten.